Hello and welcome to another edition of TV Enthusiast Weekly Show, Marvel vs. DC vs. TVE. I am your host, Will Rohrig, the Keeper of Comics, and joining me for tonight's episode is Tyson Gifford, Editor-in-Chief of TV Enthusiast.
Hello, everybody.
And a special guest for tonight's episode, Ed, who is a contributing writer to TV Enthusiast, and also formerly the editor-in-chief of Film Enthusiast.
What's going on, guys?
Yeah. Hey.
Tonight is a special episode. We're going to forego discussion of our regular shows because Season 2 of Daredevil just came out on Netflix, and we've all been binging like crazy on this show. To prepare for tonight's discussion, so this is going to be an all Daredevil episode of TVE versus Marvel versus DC. So that's pretty exciting.
So no DC.
So no DC. Ha ha.
That's okay.
Suck it, DC fans. No. So, to my knowledge, both Ed and Tyson have finished the complete season.
Yep.
I have not personally. I only made it up to episode 7. I did my best.
Shame, Will. Shame.
Yes.
Shame. What could have been so important in your life? What could have been so important in your life that you didn't finish Daredevil season 2 by now?
Yeah.
You've got 3 days, man.
Work. Pesky thing called work.
Yes, yes. Oh, and we don't. You see that type? It's like, sorry guys, I have a life.
I think Will was just, enjoying some blow and hookers.
Yeah.
Couldn't get around to it.
That too.
Okay, fine, Will. All is forgiven then.
So basically, what's going to happen is we're going to cap discussion to the end of episode 7. That still gives us plenty to discuss, as lots happened in those 7 episodes. This has been a pretty fast-moving season, and it pretty much hits the ground running and runs on all cylinders from the get-go.
It's been interesting. I have a lot of stuff to talk about. A few complaints, but mostly good stuff. But there's a few interesting things about this season and the way it was told. So
definitely. So Tyson, what are your thoughts on the new season of Daredevil?
So let's start off with just kind of right off the bat with the first episode. I thought it was I was laughing when they ran through the Chinese restaurant and Daredevil knocked out the one guy, and then all the Chinese cooks started beating on him. I jokingly tweeted, Netflix's next series is Marvel's Chinese Cooks. We also got a really badass introduction to the Punisher.
Oh yes, that was the moment I was waiting for. You're all waiting for Daredevil beating up criminals. That's fine and good. That's good. Half of that happens off screen too, so that wasn't particularly exciting for me. So the first big exciting moment was when the Punisher made his introduction, his violent introduction. Ed, what
were you gonna say, Ed?
Yeah. What?
Well, I tweeted after the first episode. I was like, Frank Castle's introduction in Daredevil is better than all 3 Punisher movies combined, because that was crazy. The way
the Irish.
Yeah, well, the Irish thing first, but the last, I would say, 10 minutes of that episode really kind of this guy. It really kind of established how this guy is someone that you do not mess with. This guy is military. Because I was questioning the whole thing. The whole time he's shooting at nothing. He's shooting at glass. He's shooting at walls, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of ridiculous. There's no way that this guy is that sloppy when he's firing. We just saw him expertly execute like 20 Irish mob guys. But then you realize, no, he's leading them away to the car where he's already got his sniper rifle lined up, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The hospital scene, that was, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the poor cartel members hanging on meat hooks and.
Yeah, the poor
cartel.
You saw it,
those poor cartel members. We gotta feel so bad.
Poor cartel members. You got to see his brutality, and what I really loved about this episode. This is what I'm talking about when it hits the ground running, because by the end of the episode, you already get Daredevil and the Punisher in a fight. Like,
bang.
Not even. This is something that you would expect second, third episode down the line. Nope, happens at the end of the first episode, and yeah, that was a pretty amazing way to end it. Like, bang, with the Punisher just getting shot in the head, and
Daredevil, by Punisher,
Daredevil getting just shot in the head by the Punisher, not even seeing it coming, which is unusual for Daredevil.
That was really cool. I have to say, on the downside, though, I really did not like Daredevil and Punisher's first fight. I think the choreography was a little off. It just looked kind of weird. It looked very, fake to me. But I really liked the final moment of him just shooting him in the head, because Punisher isn't about a bunch of punches and kicks and martial arts. It's about shooting,
Yeah,
that's what he's about. So him shooting right in the face and saying "bang" as his farewell line is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think for me, and so, because we're only talking about the first 7 episodes of this season, my reaction to I don't want to spoil what happened in the latter half of the season. I will say that I actually enjoyed season 2 more than season 1, but I'm not going to talk about that right now, because I'm a huge fan of this show. I think it's the best thing Marvel's ever done. Right from season 1, I was a huge fan of that, and I thought season 1 was probably one of the, for me, I didn't see too many problems with it. There were some minor pacing issues. That was it. Season 2, when it first started, so for the first 3 episodes, I wasn't as engaged with it as I was with with season 1. Season 1 kind of hit the ground running right away, and almost every episode ended on a really cool platform to launch right into season 2, into the second episode. I found with season 2, it was a little sloppy getting going. Once it got going, it was amazing. But the first episode for me, I actually felt a lot of it was unnecessary. I felt that some of the scenes just dragged on way too long. You had that whole first. The Asian Chinese cooks beating on the guy was pretty cool, but I almost felt like it was completely an unnecessary scene. Also, it cuts in right afterwards, and then Foggy and Matt are talking, and they're talking for 6-7 minutes. They go from just talking about some random stuff to a really serious conversation about Matt being Daredevil. And it was almost like if you had split it up into 2 or 3 different scenes and spread it out, I would have been more engaged, because I kind of tuned out already when they were kind of going on and on about nothing.
Right.
And they have their banter, which is cool. Like you expect that from them. But in season 1, they usually kept that to a bare minimum. Whereas this, it went on for a long time, and I was like, okay. And I kind of liked how they focused a little bit more on Frank Castle in the first 3 episodes, but and you kind of understand why later on. But it almost felt like I wasn't sure who the villain of this season was going to be. It didn't really set that up. It set up that Frank Castle was going to be, it almost set it up like he was going to be the main villain, which was weird, in my opinion. I almost was hoping that, because they did it in a whole separate storyline, I was kind of hoping that maybe, in my opinion, it would have been probably better if Daredevil had actually been tracking the Irish mob, and then him being in the room when Frank Castle decides to unload on everybody, so he kind of meets it. Because it felt that season 1, episodes 1, 2, and 3 kind of dragged out things that should not have needed to be dragged out. There were 3 Punisher and Daredevil fights. 3 of them. There was 1 in episode 1, 1 in episode 2, and 1 in episode 3. None of them particularly were interesting. In fact, I was getting really annoyed with that I think it was episode 2, when they had like the coolest concept for a fight ever, which was like they're fighting underneath the brick wall and there are 5 SWAT team guys shooting at them. But then if you look how the fight was choreographed, they were standing up half the time and like nobody shooting at them. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure you guys would have. It would have been so much more interesting if they were like underneath the bricks and trying to fight each other. And then in episode 3, when they did that one take fight scene again, I was like so disengaged with that because I was, okay, are we gonna? Is this like the new gimmick? You're gonna get like a single take fight in every season now of Daredevil, and it just because like the way they did it in Cutman in the second episode of season 1 was awesome because you just saw him for the first time like beaten to a bloody pulp, and you know that he's not in his best shape. So the way that they did that single take fight scene, he was fighting, the people.
He was exhausted.
He was exhausted. Like you saw that, and you felt that because the camera wasn't moving. Here it was just a stylistic thing, and it was almost like they completely forgot why that one take fight was so awesome in the first place. So up to that point, I was enjoying it. I just wasn't blown away by it. Even like little things that I thought, like even like the scene where Frank Castle's in the pawn shop and he's buying the police radio, and then the guy, oh, do you want some kiddie porn? I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What pawn shop owner would do that to some random guy? Like, seriously? Like, why would you do that? Like, there were things that were just, it was just weird the way they did things. It seemed so offbeat. And so I was not, I enjoyed it because I thought John Bernthal was amazing right from the second that they introduced him as Punisher. I think he's the best Punisher that ever played that character. I think he brings so much to the role. He was stealing every scene that he was in. It was fantastic. I just felt that everything else had lacked that energy. But then in episode 4, in my opinion, it just picked right up. Like you kind of already established what was going on. So that was my little thing with the first 2 episodes. Mm-hmm.
I agree with you mostly. I actually did like the single shot fight in episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you that it didn't have the same. It didn't tie in thematically in the way that it did in the first season, with him being just utterly exhausted and like using his arms to kind of push himself off the wall so he could keep fighting.
Yeah.
And that kind of aspect was what made that fight scene so much better than just a cool-looking fight scene.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say, regardless of that, it was a very cool fight scene in episode 3.
It was neatly choreographed.
It just didn't fit in.
Yeah, it just felt a little off. Like it was just weird that they were doing that. It was a good fight scene. I'm not gonna lie. Like it was definitely well choreographed, but.
Especially the stuff with the chain was really good.
That chain.
At the end, I was like, he just needs to keep a chain on him for the rest of the series.
That was badass, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Daredevil with the chain, watch out.
I do agree with you though that it does. It just doesn't. It doesn't fit in as nicely as it did in season 2, and it's kind of like the difference between. Season 1 and season 2 of Daredevil is that season 1 did a really good job of making like everything that happened really felt like in tune with what needed to happen, whereas in the early parts of season 2, it's very much like it's like a more polished, less meaningful thing.
Yeah, it's almost like they were trying to hit the same notes or stylistically, but just so that you'd remember, oh yeah, this is why I liked season 1, but at the same time, a lot of that built off the themes of what season 1 was about, of Daredevil explaining who he is and why he's doing what he's doing. It felt more engaging in that way, whereas with season 2, when it started, you just weren't as interested in what Matt Murdock was doing. You were more interested in Frank Castle because yes, he's the Punisher and he's a new character. But I'm having said that, I am really glad that they did decide to focus on the Punisher the way they did, because, as I said, with episode 4, the whole show kind of changed in that it laid out the foundation of what it's trying to do. And I really appreciated what season 2 thematically, what it was about, and it's like the whole concept of what it means to be a hero and the different types of heroes that there are, and where that. And I think for me, the biggest thing that season 2 does that hasn't really been done in comic books, at least to this extent, was really ask that question of where exactly do you draw the line between a hero and a villain. And that's something that Daredevil season 1 kind of touched upon, but really you just had like the dichotomy of Fisk and Matt Murdock, whereas Fisk was willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish what he wanted to do, and maybe his what he wanted was the same thing that Daredevil wanted, which was to clean up Hell's Kitchen and make New York a safer place, but he had no problem murdering innocent people. He had no problem manipulating or working with mobsters to get that done. He had no problem paying off cops. Whereas Daredevil had a very specific code. He's like, he only used violence when he needed to, but for the most part, he would rely on the law to bring justice. And it was, and that was always tested in season 1. And I loved what season 2 did when it brought on Frank Castle, who's like, well,
he falls somewhere between, because he'll kill people, but he only kills bad people.
Exactly, and then it creates that interesting, well, who decides who's bad, right?
Right.
That was really cool. And then obviously when Elektra comes in, then you have this other in-between aspect where it's like she can be heroic, but usually just to serve herself.
Right.
And that was kind of and that was kind of interesting. So you have like these three ends, and then you have Fisk being in the other end, because his presence permeates throughout the first half of the season. You know, like they constantly reference him, they constantly compare Frank and the people that Elektra's after to Wilson Fisk. So you can tell that his presence is always there. So it's just creating that balance that always never the season never makes you forget like who exactly is where and what exactly makes him a hero, what exactly makes him a villain. And I really, really liked that approach to the whole superhero genre with this season. I can't talk about it anymore because after episode 8, that's where shit goes crazy. and it really and like from 6 onward, I thought it just kept getting better and better and better. But I can't talk about it that way. We're ending at 7.
Unfortunately. I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the season, though. Is true.
Well, what did you guys think of Foggy and Karen? And what?
So far, Foggy's annoying. I mean, I get where he's coming from. I get his frustration, but he's annoying. Stop being annoying, Foggy. Karen, you know, I think you know, she's not much different from like the first season, really. I think that actress is still doing an excellent job with that character. I like her determination, trying to uncover the truth.
We're getting with her the real struggle of what she did last season.
Yeah.
And she shot Fisk's man, and nobody knows that but her right now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, nobody else knows that she did that. And
so she's constantly dealing with the idea of like the Punisher punishes people, and she feels like maybe she deserves to be punished. And that's kind of like her weird position, her relationship with the Punisher in that, you know.
That's right, because that scene where she's in the hospital with Frank, talking to him, and Frank says, you were never in any danger. He's trying to reassure her, because she's innocent, she was never his target, and she doesn't believe him because she believes she's guilty. She killed a man. Some part of her said, well, I should have been your target. It's kind of what's going through her head. I think so.
Although Punisher wouldn't kill somebody for taking out a bad guy.
No, I know, right?
But that's her dealing with her guilt over that situation.
Right.
Well, I think a lot of it, too, because she has the guilt over Ben Urich's death as well. She feels that was kind of on her head as well because of what she did.
Yeah.
So there's that. I also feel that she identifies a lot with the Punisher, with Frank Castle. I think that there's a line that she says. There's a conversation she actually has with Matt Murdock, and I don't know.
In the restaurant, you mean, right?
I don't know if
they're on the date in the restaurant.
Well, they're on it. No, it's actually in his apartment. So it might be episode 8 or 9. I'm not sure. But they have an interesting conversation, and Matt her Karen basically, there is a huge disagreement between the two of them and what they feel about vigilante justice and what Frank Castle does. Obviously, Daredevil's completely against it, but Karen identifies with it. She completely sides with Frank Castle. She sympathizes with him in every way, which is why she's so adamant on keeping him on at least exposing his story, getting people to understand what the man behind all of this, because the newspaper reports, they leave out the fact that Frank Castle was a decorated military soldier. They leave out the fact that he was a family man and that his family was murdered in front of him. And she can identify with that because of what happened to her and what happened to her in her past as well. They kind of address that Ben Urich had some information on her and on her as a younger person. You can tell that she completely identifies with what Frank has become. And she doesn't disagree with what he's doing, and she wants people to understand that when you've been practically taken away, when everything is taken away from you, what other choice do you have? And Will, you got to watch the next episode, because when they go into the trial, a lot of interesting stuff happens in that trial, especially with Foggy, which is why I wanted to get your opinion on what you thought of him now. But yeah, it's. Episode 7 is kind of a weird point, because I know Netflix also sent the first 7 episodes to a lot of critics, and I know that the critical reception, it seems that the fans are really, really impressed and happy with this season, but the critical reception, if you go on Rotten Tomatoes, has not been anywhere near as favorable as season 1. And I feel that was kind of a mistake on Netflix's part to give 7 episodes to the critics to judge, because it's not, you don't understand what really is really going on in those 7 episodes without watching the rest of the season. And
the real themes start to kind of come together afterwards.
They do, and definitely in the last half. And it's almost like you're judging the first half of the episode. And there were a lot of comments that I read in some of the reviews, and they're like, "There's no this, there's no this, and there's no this," and I'm like, "Well, you haven't seen everything yet." So yeah, there's a lot that this show brings. There's a lot of unexpected surprises that happens in throughout the entire season. But based purely on the first 7 episodes, for me, it was kind of a mixed bag, only in the sense that the first 3 episodes, in my opinion, they just weren't all that good. Especially when you look at the other 10 episodes in the season that are pretty much on a whole other level of awesome. Like there's a couple issues I had with some of the episodes in terms of pacing. Pacing's always been kind of a problem with this show, with balancing out the action with the drama. But and there was a plot twist that comes really late in the game that I saw coming a mile away, and I was like, please don't do. Oh, okay, you're gonna do that. But other than that, I mean, it's a very solid season. It's a well thought out. It's well written. I love the characters. I love the direction that Karen and Foggy take, and it's neat to see, because they lay the groundwork in the first 7 episodes, and it pays off in the second half. And same thing with Daredevil and Punisher. So.
Yeah, I really like the transition between Daredevil being kind of the focus and Elektra coming in, and how that kind of happened. I think that happened, in episode 4? Like, episode 4 ended with Punisher caught, and then Matt Murdock went back to his apartment, and Elektra was there, right?
Yes.
Was that 4 or 5?
That was
something like that.
That was 4, I think. Yeah, because I think she slowed her heart rate down, so you didn't notice her right away, which is kind of cool that she knew how to do that. I thought that was neat. That was also kind of a jarring moment there too, because for that whole up to that point, you think it's really just about Daredevil and the Punisher, and they haven't even addressed what the main villain of this season is going to be, right? So it was a weird way of establishing the foundation for me, I think, with the first 3 episodes. But see, episode 4 really hit me because, like in a good way, because I felt much more absorbed because of John Bernthal. And that speech that he gives at the end of the episode, with the cops coming, and he's like, "I'm done," and he's told Daredevil basically everything that he's done and why he's he's doing it. And I thought that was
telling
really
a heartbreaking story, very
yeah.
gruesome story about the way he phrased it of her meat was coming out of her red, out of where her face should have been, or where her
Yeah.
face used to be.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was
Very graphic.
expertly written. Like that was fantastic writing, and his performance just sucked you in completely. And at that point, I was like, I see exactly where this show wants to go and the direction it wants to take and what it wants to say, and I was immediately hooked at that point. So the season really takes a lot of risks, I think, and some of them don't pay off as well. At least for me, like I can easily watch episodes 1 through 13 again and be completely fine with it, because with when you're watching it for the first time, especially with the weight of expectations that this show had going in, you expect perfection. Because in my opinion, season 1 was, apart from a few minor grievances, it was virtually perfect. Like I loved every second of it. So it was hard for me to not have that expectation coming into season 2, particularly because of the marketing campaign that Netflix did, which was awesome. But this was, you can almost tell it was almost like watching kind of a show that was a shadow of itself. But then I guess it had to kind of do that because it knew what it knew what it was trying to say, and as soon as episode 4, in my opinion, it really picks up and really addresses what the show is about.
It's kind of like the difference between Daredevil and Jessica Jones in that
Mm-hmm.
Daredevil felt more cohesive and solid, like a solid singular story that was better executed. But Jessica Jones had like more meaning to it, with all the stuff about rape and about the kind of the more personal story between Kilgrave and Jessica. That I ended up liking Jessica Jones more than the first season of Daredevil, because even though I acknowledge that it wasn't executed as well as Daredevil, it had more, I guess, ambition in its premise of what it was telling. And I think this is kind of similar in the sense that, like, this isn't quite as well done as the first season of Daredevil, like from beginning to end. Season 2 isn't, but its highs are higher.
Yes.
It's hitting certain points that the first season of Daredevil wasn't reaching. So it's that kind of like weird difference where it's like, it's somewhere, it's making it kind of between the map. So you have Daredevil and Jessica Jones on each side, and Daredevil season 2 kind of fitting somewhere in the middle, where it's got a little bit more emotional relevance, a little bit more of a connection in there that's deeper, but it's also a bit better executed still than Jessica Jones.
Oh yeah, like, sorry, go ahead, Will.
No, I totally agree with what Tyson said there. I believe that Daredevil is better executed than Jessica Jones, like both seasons. If we're going to compare the two shows, then Daredevil so far has definitely been the better of the two.
But I think Jessica Jones has a lot going for it because it's such a different type of show. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think it deals. Jessica Jones is a really ambitious show because it really is talking about a lot of things that comic book fans like when you're dealing with some of the things that happened in Jessica Jones, which were so disturbing and so just mind-boggling, like that the show actually went there, and because it's essentially a show about a rape victim suffering from some kind of incredible PTSD. And it's such a different show that even its flaws don't detract from the fact that the show has a lot of meaning to it, like you said, Tyson.
Yeah.
And Daredevil season 2 doesn't quite go to that type of subject matter because it doesn't have to. It's not about that. But the way that it talks. But I think for me, because of I love superhero stories that aren't afraid to dissect their heroes. And we don't get that a lot with the bigger budget Marvel movies. Like Ant-Man is more fun. Guardians of the Galaxy is more fun. They don't really address this whole notion of vigilante justice. Like Batman is great for this, and I really hope that even like the Superman movie kind of addresses this. But Daredevil season 2 already does, and it really brings up that it takes a well-rounded approach to what is the difference between a superhero, a vigilante, and a plain-out criminal, and that is definitely territory that it's almost like, I hate to bring everything back to Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, because I just happen to do that. But it's kind of like you have this premise where it's like, yeah, she's a Slayer, she's one girl in all the world, and she'll fight till she dies. And for the first few seasons, it's like happy-go-lucky. It's like, yeah, she's gonna fight a monster every week. It's great. And then all of a sudden she goes up, and you're like, wait, she's never gonna have a life that normal people will have. She's doomed to do this, and the worse it gets, like, because as she has to deal with real life problems with this happening, you start to you start to realize that this is actually a much more serious concept than with a lot more depth to it. And then the show explores that concept. That's what I think Daredevil season 2 did really well. Where yes, having this blind superhero kick all sorts of ass is a lot of fun. Watching all these criminals get their asses kicked is great, even with the gore and the blood. But then there's an underlying subtext to that, which is, what exactly is he doing, and what are the implications that his actions have? And that's what I really like. Like, even like Frank Castle kind of is the extreme case that comes out of Daredevil. Like, there was always that line that Wilson Fisk said to Daredevil, I think it's season 1, where you're just a one bad day from becoming me. And that's something that's always been permeated throughout this series so far. And it really brings to light, like, the whole concept, like the whole dichotomy that being a superhero isn't necessarily always a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. Well, a lot of that owes itself to, like, the format of this. Like, Daredevil has, like, 13 hours to explore its themes of what's a vigilante, what isn't, what makes a hero, what doesn't make a hero, the stuff it's exploring, versus like a traditional Marvel movie, which only gets like 2 hours tops.
Mm-hmm.
So like, they can't, like, in your typical Iron Man movie, they can't really afford to delve like too into Iron Man's psyche or what makes him tick. Whereas you can really get in with 13 hours, you can really get into the heads of these characters, and I think Daredevil is actually better for it. That's why I think this works so much better than if they made like a Daredevil MCU movie.
Because Daredevil's not going to be as big and flashy as the other superheroes are. And so where is Daredevil's strengths then? Well, it's a more personal story. Mm-hmm. And you're going to get that much better executed in a long format like television than you would on a film.
Well, because you saw it with even the 2003 Daredevil, which just tried to copy. Well, they tried to copy off the success of Spider-Man, which is what they were trying to do with that movie, because all the scenes where he's like flipping and flying in the air and doing all that stuff, and they try to make it a slightly little grittier, but they missed that opportunity. That there's a lot of things that Daredevil, the concept of the show and what he goes through, his journey is a lot more complex than just flying around buildings and maybe beating people up in a more harsher way than Spider-Man does. So that's where the movie kind of missed its mark. I do think that they could have done a decent Daredevil movie, but I think the fact that they're using the format of TV and the Netflix format particularly of just unleashing all the episodes at the same time, so it's almost like you're watching one giant movie, or one giant story, but they're breaking it up in pieces, which is how the TV format lends itself well to great storytelling.
Right. It's like a book.
Yeah.
It's like a book, like chapters of a book.
Mm-hmm.
And actually a lot of books used to come out in a serialized manner, where they would come out one chapter at a time as part of a joint collaboration, where you'd get like a magazine kind of thing, and it would have like one chapter of the story, and then you'd get the next chapter the next month or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of books, I think Charles Dickens' books came out that way, like Great Expectations. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of goes with the way that the TV format is, and with Netflix, it's like you're just getting a book. You're getting a solid book right in front of you, and you can read it at your own pace. And that's kind of cool, because sometimes one chapter you feel good and you want to stop after a chapter. Sometimes you want to go on to the next chapter right away. And
or like a graphic novel. Yeah, like a graphic novel or volume format of all these comic book issues that are all put together so you can get the whole storyline.
Yeah.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about Elektra and kind of the change of having Punisher be like, you know, this kind of force and everything that's happening early on, and then him being in jail but still remaining part of the story, but having a completely different dynamic with the way he interacts with the story, being, you know, in the hospital, going to jail, everything with that. And then how the Elektra story kind of starts feeding in, and you kind of start to see how she can kind of derail Matt's life a little bit, getting him distracted and other things. And we can't go too much into that because a little bit of that starts to get into past episode 7, but we can get a little bit into it, like you know, Matt going off to the what was it, a party or something at the Yakuza building. That happened on episode 6, or I think.
They say like the name of the building, but every time they say the name of like that building, I just think of Nakatomi Plaza from Die Hard. Like, it sounds so similar. I'm like,
Maybe they were paying homage to something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, that they go in. That actually comes to something that I didn't like about the show, which is that I feel that like in the first season they did a really good job of showing Matt's limitations because of him not having sight. Like, he can hear, and he gets almost like a sonar effect that allows him to see the world on fire, as they showed it in the first season. But he's still limited, and like they had like I think in the first episode they had the fight scene where you saw him having to like zero in on the sound of the chain rustling and the squeaking of the boot on the stair, and like you kind of got the idea of like, okay, he's putting this together so he can fight the guy. He's putting together what sounds are necessary for him to key in on, and they did that a little bit in this season, like at a few moments, but it almost felt kind of jarring because otherwise it was almost like he could just flat out see. You know, like, or he could like see things that were like just didn't make sense. Like when he was in that building with her and they went and he recognized that the paper was in a drawer. He didn't like hit the drawer and then like react to the sound wave to say, oh, there's paper in this or something. It's just like, oh, that drawer has paper in it over there.
Well, because he also didn't know exactly what she was looking for, so how did he know that particular paper, like it was written on that particular paper that he was smelling or something like that? Yeah, there's definitely that.
We're seeing here. We're seeing something common in tradition, serialized superhero like stories where it's like I don't know if
you suspended your disbelief. Now just follow the story. Just forget the little guy over there. You know.
It's more like, I don't know if there's like a term for this, but it's like superhero has powers, but like they fluctuate with what they can do depending on like the writer's whims. And this is like,
you get a cool scene where Wolverine heals instantly, and then you get another one where he gets hit and he's like suffering and out of commission for a few hours.
right. Mm-hmm. Completely dependent on the writer's needs, and I think this is a prime example of that, where Daredevil's powers seem inconsistent.
I don't recall having this issue in the first season, though. Do either of you? Because I noticed it several times in the season where I was kind of like, okay, wait a minute, you know? There's one, without spoiling anything, there's one that happens later on that has to do with a mark on a wall. And he just glances over and notices the mark on the wall, and it's like he can't see! There's nothing to determine that there was a mark on the wall, but he noticed it somehow. It's like...
Well, true. Didn't notice this in the first season, but you got to remember this season it's a new crew. It's a new showrunner.
Yeah.
I don't know if like all the
writers are. But both of them did write on season 1. Douglas Petrie and Marco Ramirez wrote on season 1, so they definitely are the showrunners now. But to my understanding, Estonite and still had they knew kind of where they were going with season 2. They just didn't continue on.
The Knight was involved in
yeah.
season 2. He just wasn't running it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I don't know. I don't have like a very good explanation for it other than that. It is poor writing when that happens. I don't believe there's a good excuse for that other than, well, we need Matt's powers to do this to further the story, and it's like, because you can't further the story organically with what's been established.
Well, at its worst, it still isn't freezing laser tripwires.
That's true.
Well,
I don't know, Ed, if you watched The Flash, but they had a moment where they had like laser tripwires, and Leonard Snart, Captain Cold, froze them and then broke them to get past.
Oh yeah, because that's the smart idea. Mm-hmm. No, there's nothing like that in Daredevil, thankfully. But I find that I've always found that the whole concept of like Daredevil's powers, which is basically heightened senses and no visibility, has always been kind of a hard concept anyway to sell, because they can't really define it. And again, the 2003 movie tried to define it as being like a radar sense, which just looks stupid, because it's like so basically he can see. That's basically what you were telling me, but he can see in black and white. So thankfully the show didn't do that. And I remember in the first season they kind of explained it as like an impressionistic painting. So things that he can smell, things that he can sense, things that he can touch and feel, he just knows what
it's almost like synesthesia.
Yeah. So I mean, I get that. I think the World on Fire thing was more of a metaphor. I don't know if he actually sees just everything outlined in fire. I know that they cut to the POV shot, but I think that was more of a thematic representation of what he sees, as opposed to like actually what he sees. I really do feel he's blind, but because of what he's able to understand and feel. But like I said, it is one of those concepts or that the writers probably aren't clearly defined on what he's able to do himself. And so sometimes it comes up where they'll do something. Well, yeah, maybe he would be able to do that. Maybe he would be able to sense that paper would be there, or that marking would be there, because he can sense certain blood or the smell of blood or something like that. So, but it's just a little, in the sense that sometimes it takes a little too much disbelief or less. Like, I was fine with the scenes. I don't think they detracted from the story at all, because it just felt a little weird. You're right. And I just went with it, because I was like, okay, fine.
It's like,
because
okay, comic book logic.
well, because I've never been really able to define his powers either. I know that he's very capable of fighting, but they also said that Stick only trained him up to him being like a 10-year-old kid. So you're telling me in the past 20 years he trained himself to fight better than Stick? So there's even that like lapse in logic as well. So it's just something that you kind of have to take.
Yeah, it's a case where you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit too, and when you're dealing with superhero media, it's part of the course where you are asked to suspend your disbelief more than.
And this is much less so than like they would ask from us on like Flash or something.
Oh yeah, the Flash.
Which oftentimes ask us to forgive some very heinous.
But Daredevil also takes itself more seriously than the Flash, so I think it kind of held up to a higher standard. Which I think more often than not it succeeds, because you don't, like, in my opinion, Marvel tends to sometimes overcrowd their movies and their shows, and Daredevil almost looked like it was going that way, because you have like the Punisher, you have Elektra.
I was worried about them doing Punisher and Elektra in the same season. Yeah.
So like it almost felt like there was going to be that problem with season 2, but they actually managed to balance the elements quite well. Like in my opinion. So
having Punisher in the foreground for the first few episodes, and then kind of putting him in the background and bringing out Elektra to the foreground with the Punisher in the background, that works really well.
I think I actually liked the Punisher best when he was a background element, when he wasn't free, because it got deeper into his story more than just his actions, you know? And
Yeah.
I really like that. I really like the kind of dilemma of that. I like the kind of like arguments about, you know, if he should take a PTSD defense or not, and those kind of things. I thought all of that was really good, and I really liked the
Mm-hmm.
trial and the kind of events in the trial, but we can't really get into that. But yeah, that's. I think I ended up liking that stuff more. I liked Daredevil more when he was in prison.
I did too.
He
Like
was out.
I did too because I felt that they did a great job of establishing the Punisher. You know, he basically rips apart the Irish mob. He's hanging cartel guys by meat hooks. You don't need a lot of you don't need a lot to know that this guy really knows what he's doing, and it would have been a really kind of not so great season if they just had Frank Castle running around town killing bad guys. So the fact that they did that for the first couple episodes, and Daredevil was trying to catch him as a villain, and then they bring him in as he's arrested, he's put on trial, and then they got to focus on another character of Daredevil's past, and bring her in, and it allowed us to kind of absorb all the elements better, because you have that's for me that's why I kind of got what the show was trying to do, because you see what the Punisher does, then you see what Elektra's does, and you see Daredevil's relationship with both of them, and then the trial even leads into Daredevil's relationship with Karen and Foggy, which is what the big focus on the next few episodes will. When you get to that, you'll see that. So there's a lot there, and it balances. I thought it balanced each element well. It focused equally on Matt Murdock's relationship with every character in the show, and
Yeah, I agree, and especially yeah, like what you're saying, you could tell like the last episode that I watched, episode 7. You could see Matt's relationship with both Foggy and Karen start to become strained
mm-hmm.
as he runs around with Elektra behind their backs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is a good time to bring up. I put out some feelers for some viewer mail to get some impressions or questions or anything from anybody that might watch our show and ask us about what they thought about Daredevil or what's going on there. And we got one response here, so this is our first one that we've had like this. But Amazing LSB asks, do you think Punisher will get his own series on Netflix? He posted an article basically describing the likelihood of it, and then he said that he certainly hopes that is the case. So what do you guys think about a Punisher series on Netflix?
I think that is very, very highly likely, especially after seeing Bernthal's performance as the Punisher. I mean, this is unequivocally the best Punisher. Sorry, Thomas Jane, but Bernthal.
Don't apologize. John Bernthal is way better than Thomas Jane.
John, yeah.
Don't apologize.
Don't apologize.
I love Thomas Jane, but yeah, as Punisher,
this dude, his performance, he totally deserves his own series. I'm sorry, he has earned this. So I would.
Where do you think that would go, though? Where do you think a Punisher series would go? Because they covered the main kind of beat of his origin and the kind of more personal stuff. You know, without getting into spoiler, that's that's the focus of his character this season.
But Marvel has had for years and years and years a Punisher-specific comic book. So it's not like there's no dearth of material they can dig up to use for this. It's not.
What about an alternative scenario in which they don't do a Punisher series, but they do a Punisher movie or a series of Punisher movies? Because Netflix has been doing some original movies a lot recently too. What if they did?
They could do
like a 2-hour Punisher movie or something on Netflix.
That'd still be great. I don't know. I don't know if after seeing this, I don't know if I'd be more interested in a movie. I think a 13-episode series like what we're getting that really digs into the Punisher's psyche, why he does what he does, really challenges that character, would be a lot more interesting than just a 2-hour thing, I think.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It's just that there's so much Punisher in this season of Daredevil, and as it goes on from where you are, Will, there's just keeps being more and more
well, there's so much
about
Punisher
Punisher.
because right now, yeah, this is their chance to play with this character in the MCU.
I mean,
And
it's
I
his,
get
it's
that.
his origin story in a sense.
It's his origin story in a sense, and it's also like we don't know if there's going to be any other outlet to see the Punisher in the future. We don't, there's no guarantee he's getting his own movie or his own series. So
I
it's
kind of see that's the thing is I kind of wonder if a Punisher series would be the right move. I almost think it might be better if he's just like this guy that like how Night Nurse pops up in like Jessica Jones and also in both seasons of Daredevil, where it's like he could be some figure that kind of pops up and reoccurs throughout the different Defender series from now on, and then sometime further down the line you give him like a movie that's just like a full-on action thing. And then maybe at some point later on a series, but I just don't know how it can fit in with what they're doing with the Defenders right now.
I have to correct you. She is not Night Nurse. That was the original intention. Apparently not.
Was
Apparently
it Claire Temple or?
Claire Temple. Yeah, she's not.
That's it.
She's not Night Nurse because apparently, like, Night Nurse is going to appear in Doctor Strange, and it's going to be a different person. But yeah, the Claire Temple character was originally supposed to be Night Nurse until Marvel said no. Until Marvel told them no, and so they changed the character somewhat. So yeah, it's just a very, very similar character.
Yeah. I think that I don't think Netflix is going to greenlight a Punisher series right now. I don't think because I think right now their main focus is on getting out Luke Cage and getting out Iron Fist and getting out the Defenders, and I think that's their main focus, especially with Jessica Jones season 2. We may not even see a season 3 of Daredevil for maybe a couple of years because of just the amount of stuff that's happening. My personal opinion, and I'm going against the grain on this one, I don't think a Punisher series or another movie is necessary. I actually thought that they did a great job establishing the Punisher in season 2 into the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Daredevil. I think if they were to continue do another Punisher series, you're kind of stuck in the sense that you're basically looking at him. You're going in the same sense as like what Punisher Warzone did, where you're looking more of it as a celebration of Punisher's brutality, which would kind of undermine what Daredevil season 2 was doing.
Right.
Because the Punisher declined in sales in the 90s because people were just kind of sick of a lot of the. I felt the Punisher. I think a lot of it was becoming like the Punisher, the way he was, like as this like just absolutely insane anti-hero, almost kind of became irrelevant in a lot of media and stuff. And I remember he was revived in '98, and they kind of did that mystical part where he was like reborn, where he was like killed and then reborn. I wouldn't mind seeing, because Daredevil seems to be going into that route now, where because the Elektra, with the oh wait,
Yeah.
I'm not going to spoil anything. Sorry, I'm stopping right there.
Okay.
I can't talk about it. But I can't talk about it because there's things that happen. We can talk about that later on. What I would like to see the Punisher do, but in my opinion, I just don't see a need for it. Like, I mean, I would love to see John Bernthal continually reprise his role as the Punisher in pretty much as many like put him in Jessica Jones, put him in Daredevil season 3, put him in the Avengers, because that character does a lot with Scarlet Witch. And, yeah, he has a lot with Scarlet Witch, with Spider-Man. He has a lot of great interactions with those characters. So have him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as much as you want. I just don't see how a Punisher series would bring anything new to the table.
I agree with you. I totally 100% agree with you. I can see the argument. Like, I was putting forth the argument that, yeah, there's a lot of material. If they were to do a series, they can. But for me, I'm not dying for a Punisher series. I'm not dying for a movie even. I mean, this is good for me because what makes this interesting to me is that it's not just the Punisher killing bad guys and doing his own thing. It's the Punisher, but then he's put up against Daredevil, who is similar, except Daredevil has like a moral code where he will not kill, and he's not like a full-on
Catholic guilt.
yeah, that Catholic guilt. He's not a full-on psychopath like the Punisher is, and it's fun to see them interact and come up against each other and see their ideologies clash. That's what's interesting to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think
I agree. That's why I was kind of saying, like, if they really wanted to do something, it would almost be better if they did a movie, just because I don't think they'd be able to scrounge up 13 hours of material for him that wouldn't kind of destroy what's going on with the Defenders plan. But I could see after the Defenders, like in the way that after the Avengers, it kind of, Marvel went to phase 2 of their plan because there was this huge significant event and it changed everything, and then the entire kind of direction of everything else shifted after that, And I could see that being the case after the Defenders. You could build up more story for Punisher. You could say, okay, now that this has changed, now that there's been this huge paradigm shift, now like the Punisher has another role in which to act. He has another place in which to be the Punisher where it's necessary for him.
Right.
And I don't see that until after the Defenders, until their first phase of their Marvel plan or their Netflix plan is done, I don't see where it could fit in.
Exactly.
That's why I suggested if they did a movie just because they really wanted to keep the character around or something, a movie could work better than a series just because they don't have to build out 13 hours of story for them,
Well, I
agree with you, though.
Well, I hate pulling out the same card where anything technically could work if you had the right writing team behind it, you had the right story and whatnot. My only thing with the Punisher and why I don't think Netflix right now, it's not a priority for them because, like you said, Defenders, like it could happen down the road. To answer the question, I'm more, well, do we really want it? And my thing with the Punisher is, the best series, like TV series and films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe are the characters that actually go through change, where they have like these big arcs. Iron Man having one of the biggest arcs from going from a weapons dealer to kind of like a savior, a proponent of the exact opposite of that. Like the characters have to go through these massive changes in order for us to really care about their stories. And the Punisher doesn't go through any change. The Punisher is the Punisher, and that's why none of the films have worked for me, because other than the fact that he gets revenge,
he's a constant.
He's a constant. What was done to him was atrocious, and he gets revenge on all those people, and that's been the Punisher. So you'll never be able to get like a film or a series above B movie status with the Punisher unless you brought in unless you really tried to take the story elements and rework them, which Marvel is good at. So, but I just don't see a Punisher series being that interesting. And I mean, we watch it, of course, and I think right now Marvel has kind of addressed that as well, which is why they decided to bring the Punisher in as a side character to Daredevil. I think they realized that yes, this character should be in the cinematic universe, but we're not going to give him his origin show or his own story because he just doesn't have that. He's not an interesting enough character to have his own show, in my opinion. And
he's like a wild card presence.
Yeah, and what they did with Daredevil, the reason why that worked so well, why the Punisher had so much humanity in this show, was because of the dichotomy between him and Matt Murdock. You take that away, you don't have anything. Because you can't have the Punisher fall in love with anyone else, because that would detract from his whole from who he is. So you couldn't do that. And the reason why it worked so well in Daredevil was because of the relationship that he had with Matt Murdock, the way his ideology contrasted with everybody else, and where he fits in that in the overall themes of that season. So
it's kind of that's how I feel like about Hulk too. Like neither of the Hulk movies worked, and people keep going, okay, when are we going to have another Hulk movie? I don't think, like, there's one type of Hulk movie that can work, in my opinion, and that's Planet Hulk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they take him out into space, and you give him enemies that are on his level, and then you can get something that works, you know. But just doing another kind of Hulk movie on Earth, where like the government's after him because he's too dangerous, it's like it didn't work in the movies because it was just kind of boring. It's like you have Bruce Banner being kind of interesting as a human, and then you have him as the Hulk just being kind of this force of nature, and that's why he works so well. He was like probably the best part of the Avengers.
Yeah.
Because they were able to kind of fit him into this as like this wild card element, but he couldn't necessarily hold a movie himself unless, like I said, it was something like Planet Hulk. I feel kind of the same way about The Punisher, in which that I just don't see where they could go with a Punisher story, especially a 13-hour story. It's just like, that's a lot to fill in of just the Punisher going out and killing people, you know?
Well, you had that with Warzone, and if you look at anyone that talks about Warzone, even the people that like the film, they say, yeah, it's the most accurate representation of Frank Castle. Why? Because he rips someone's intestines out and, like, feeds it to him or kicks them, or, like that movie is extremely graphic, and it's bloody. It's probably one of the most violent movies I've seen in a long time, and that's kind of what Punisher is, and so I don't, and that movie doesn't work. It's not a good movie. It's just a bloody, if you want to turn your brain off and have some fun watching people get killed, that's what it is. And anyone that's liked the movie, that's like their only reason, like the only thing they've ever said that they said it's good. Oh, because it's extremely violent. It's like, okay, so
it's like
yeah.
it's like watching a Friday the 13th movie or something, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's at a certain point, it's just like, because it's kind of funny seeing the different ways he can kill people.
Yeah,
so like, this time he smashes a sleeping bag up against a tree, you know?
Exactly, it's B-movie status. So I don't think Marvel is interested in that right now. So
yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I don't want to shit on the idea of like a Punisher series because he is an awesome character, and I do want to see more of that actor in that role, playing that character, you know. But I think it almost serves better to have him just kind of pop up throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially in the Netflix universe, as this kind of wild card, you know, this kind of presence that could shift something, you know. He could cause a shift, you know. I'd actually kind of like to see him pop up in like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something.
Well, the presence that Jon Bernthal brings to that character is so awesome that if you not necessarily minimize his appearances, but selectively included him in the cinematic universe, he would become a fan favorite just because of what Jon Bernthal brings to the character. Like, he would be so much fun. It's like you would have the crowd cheering for him. But it's almost like when you throw him into his own series, unless you're gonna really change and bring all that humanity back to him that he had from Daredevil season 2, which, if you're trying to stay true to the comics, it's not really there. You're not gonna have a show that's on the same level as Jessica Jones or Daredevil. You'll probably have a show that's more along the lines of, I hate to say it, like the first half of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was a very mixed reception. So yeah,
it's kind of like the midichlorian moment debate with like which, you know, like if you know too much about something, it destroys the mysticism and everything that's interesting about it. I think that you're going to get kind of the same thing with the Punisher. Like, if you spend too much time with the Punisher, you just start to realize, like, oh, he isn't really cool and morally complex. He's just a fucking batshit crazy killer who had something horrible happen to him.
Yeah.
And the further you can stay away from that, the more you can keep him as this, like, kind of really interesting element, the better he's going to work. And if you put him front and center, you don't have that anymore. You know, I mean, it's, you know, some movies and some TV shows, the kind of weird, enigmatic characters are sometimes the coolest characters. That doesn't mean they should be the main character.
No.
You know? Like, Ben Linus should not be the main character on a TV show.
No.
In Lost, he was like, creepy and interesting, and you know, you were fascinated every time he was on screen, but it was the fact that he wasn't always on screen. It was the fact that there was some mystery to him is a lot of what made him interesting in the first place.
You don't want Ben.
Boba Fett, another example. Star Wars, you know.
Come on, you don't want.
Once they brought in Jango Fett and stuff, it was like. What was that, Will?
Oh, nothing.
Sorry, I cut you off twice there.
Yeah.
Okay, so Will, is there anything else, or does this pretty
Um,
much bring us to an end,
that
or?
pretty much brings us to an end. Yeah, I think we've covered everything.
I think Will needs to just get off this podcast and watch the rest of
I
season
need to watch
2
the rest
so
of
we
season.
can talk about it some more.
Definitely. When are you free to do this again, Ed?
Just let me know. Just let me
Okay,
know.
I'll just let you know. I mean, I can most likely, definitely have this finished by next week.
Okay.
We
We'll
got
work out the details behind the scenes.
Yeah, we'll work out the details. I'm anxious to get. I was so disappointed. I gotta say, I was so disappointed because I finished episode 7 and I looked at the time. I was like, "Oh, podcast!" Because I was like right ready to just start episode 8 and go through that. I'm like, "Oh, it's podcast time." I can't.
Get some rest. Get some rest. Set aside 6 hours and just watch it straight through. I'm telling you, it will be like.
So
The next 6 episodes are
it's a
freaking
roller
phenomenal.
coaster from here,
Yes.
basically.
Yes. Like
Nice.
you'll,
Yeah.
and it's not like cheap cliffhanger endings to get you watching the next one. It's like I want to know what happens next because everything is just building. Tension is building. All the suspense is
Nice.
building. You see
Yeah,
where it's
because
going. It's awesome.
I feel like I'm on the precipice of like awesome right now with
Mm-hmm.
like the way this ended and from what everybody's saying. So I'm super excited.
Did either of you catch the Luke Cage teaser?
Yes, I saw it.
So it's apparently it's at the end of the last episode, like it's kind of like the Marvel post-credit scene or something, but it's not popping up for everybody. It didn't pop up for me,
It only pops
and
up.
it's just like a 30-second teaser.
It popped up for me when the credits started rolling, and it kind of just how Netflix minimizes the window, and then it just showed the Luke Cage trailer. It's like play the trailer now. That was all it was. It wasn't
I didn't even get
It wasn't
that.
yeah, no, it wasn't attached to. It wasn't attached to the actual episode itself. It was a separate file that you had to play. So you might have
Did
to.
you see it, Will?
No, you said it's at the end of the last episode.
Yeah, but it's also it got ripped and put up on YouTube and stuff. So.
Oh no, so I didn't watch it.
And it's unrelated. Like it's not. It doesn't have anything to do with Daredevil or
Okay,
nothing happens in it. It's like a quick little jab.
It's 30 seconds.
But at least you know it's coming out on September 30th, and I think that was the main reason for its existence.
So September 30th.
The most
Cage.
Mm-hmm.
And,
the most important information you get from it is that Luke Cage is really tired of buying new clothes.
Yeah. Which, when you think of it, yeah, that could be a problem.
So Luke Cage is coming in September. That means Iron Fist is probably going to be this time next year.
It could be, yeah. I wonder what they're doing, because I was kind of surprised Daredevil Season 2 came before Defenders.
Right.
But, no, it kind of makes sense.
Daredevil ended up being that popular, yeah. Daredevil.
I wonder if Jessica Jones is going to come before Defenders, if Season 2 is going to come, or if they're going to just get through the rest and then into Defenders.
Yeah, I know,
and then we're going to get like Season 2 Jessica Jones.
I think we're going to do Iron Fist and Defenders before we get to a Jessica Jones Season 2 or Daredevil Season 3, because I think Daredevil Season 2 was just something because of the reception of the first season got, and probably because they had these ideas to do like the Punisher and Elektra. They probably wanted to do that, so they veered a little bit off plan. But I think the plan is still firmly get through the next 2 shows and then get Defenders happening, and then probably then they'll talk about further seasons of existing shows.
Yeah, I think also because there's something that happens in Season 2 that kind of ties into Jessica Jones. Season 2 of Daredevil that ties into Jessica Jones. So I don't know exactly how they're going to do. Like, I think we'll have to get Jessica Jones Season 2 before we get Daredevil Season 3. And I think also we have to get Defenders before we get Jessica Jones Season 2. Because I think, I don't know what the overarching storyline will be for the Defenders, but right now I don't think that they need to bring in anybody else. Like, Daredevil Season 2 almost felt like they had to do that so we can establish a lot more of the world in Hell's Kitchen, so that we can because Luke Cage and Iron Fist will probably have their own separate stories, and they'll still tie them into Daredevil and Jessica Jones. So you're still going to see a lot of the characters from both shows kind of pop up here and there in cameo roles, appearances.
So I'm super excited to see what the Defenders is going to be now. Now that we're seeing like how this version of the MCU kind of looks and kind of operates, and also I kind of can't imagine Jessica Jones as part of like a superhero team. that'd be really interesting in and of itself.
But it's going to be a series, which makes it, if they were doing like Avengers, like a movie, it would be kind of weird for her, like with her reluctance to be a superhero, to be like in the fray for this 2-hour thing. But she can serve this whole other purpose when you're doing it as a series and going into like, her investigating things or her being involved in these other things, and without her necessarily being like a front lines on the team attacking type person.
Right.
Well, because she's not really a member of the comics and the Defenders in the comics.
Right.
To my understanding, she's not. So it will be interesting to see what role she plays in the Defenders because of that. But they're definitely gonna. I'm pretty sure they're gonna have her as a pivotal role. Just it may not necessarily be as fighting crime. It might be like behind the scenes, which would be cool.
That's cool. It will be cool.
We'll
definitely.
have to see what happens with that. So I'm thinking. Iron Fist, maybe around this time next year, early in the first half of 2017.
They've already started casting. They got a director.
Yeah.
So production.
And then Defenders at the end of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Because it makes sense, because even though Jessica Jones has a confirmed second season, that's all that's come out about there being a second season. There's been no talk about story or where they're going or anything.
Right, exactly. There's been nothing. So... And Iron Fist, production on Iron Fist has been ramping up. We just got the casting of the main character. We got the rumor Shang-Chi might be in it. There's a director, so we know that that's moving ahead. So that's going to be a lot sooner than a Jessica Jones season 2.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's pretty much everything, I think.
That covers,
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Marvel versus DC versus TVE. I was your host, Will Rohrig, the Keeper of Comics. Ed joined us tonight for this special episode, and as always, our editor-in-chief, Tyson Gifford, joined us for this. You guys have anything you want to plug? Anything you want to point out to our viewers?
Well, for the film that I'm working on, titled The Thoromon, which is a horror feature film that we're putting into production in the later half of 2016. We're already underway with creature design sketches. Pre-production is well underway. We're casting right now, and that's where we are on that front. So,
Nice, awesome.
Moving forward.
Do you have like a website or anything up yet?
Yeah.
Website will be out at the end of March. So probably the next time
Okay.
I'm on the show, I'll have a site to plug.
Definitely, awesome.
Cool.
Looking forward to getting more information about that, and looking forward to learning where we can get more information about that, because that sounds really awesome. What about you, Tyson?
Well, for me, just check out the site, TVEnthusiast.com. We have Podcast 50 is coming up. We're going to be recording that on the 31st of March at the end. That's going to be with Ed as well. And we're going to be doing Advocates of Great Television. So look forward on next week. We'll announce all of the titles that will be in our Advocates discussion. So if you guys want to watch along with us and check out what's coming up, then check out podcast number 49, and we'll announce what shows we have going into Advocates, and then 50 you can check us out talking about them. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Great. Fantastic.
I love Advocates. I can't wait.
Advocate. Oh, I know.
You guys have helped me expand my TV horizons with that show.
Well,
So.
that's awesome. That's awesome. That's certainly the goal, to get to help each other discover awesome new shows we probably never would have discovered on our own. And with that, that brings us to an end. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you next week with our regularly scheduled programming where we will be discussing Arrow and Flash and all those other shows that we didn't get a chance to discuss tonight.
All right.
All right.
Cheers.
All right.
Good night, everyone. All right.
Later.